Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast. Let's see. Hi, Ashley. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to make a protein shake because I was like, I have to eat something or
That's
have some
definitely priority.
substance.
Definitely the priority. Absolutely.
Yeah. How's your day going?
My day's good. I have been just chatting with my new best friend Kathy all day. I love that woman to death. I
I love
really
her
do.
too. She and I have known each other since she's known me since I was young,
Oh
like
yeah.
pretty young. And I'm sad that I don't get to really see her anymore because I just recently moved and our schedules just weren't aligning, and she's just a wonderful being to have a light in your life,
I
basically.
agree. That's my
Yeah.
experience so far. Are you still in Myrtle? You moved out of there or still there?
No, so I grew up in Myrtle Beach, but I just moved to Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is on the border of Charlotte. Not sure if you're
Hmm.
familiar with the area, but yeah, so I just moved up here because I got a new professor position at my alma mater, which is at Winthrop University.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a big life shift, and I've talked to Kathy about it a little bit. It's a new era, new beginning for sure. So I'm excited for it.
That is really
It's a
exciting.
lot of it's a lot of work, but at the same time, it's like work I feel prepared for. So I
Good.
think
Well,
it'll be good.
yeah, good. I feel like it'll be good. And it sounds like you've been in higher ed for a long time. So if you know that world, I'm sure that you're prepared for it, but it always does. I'm also in higher ed or have been for a long, long time. And I'm actually very excited to talk to you for a few reasons because one of them is that you work in the world of dance, but in higher education and dance. And that's not exactly my world, but it's very parallel to where I've
Oh,
been, or like
okay.
adjacent. Like if we'd been at the same institutions, I bet we'd be sharing a building. So I bet we have some
Okay, yeah. So tell
cross
me,
ideas
okay,
there. But
well, tell me Emily, and I see Jane on your screen. So I don't know, is
either
that
one is fine.
correct?
My first name is Emily, my middle name is Jane, and I
Okay.
usually publicly go by Jane, but you
Okay.
can call me either one. It's fine.
Okay. Because I know Kathy said Emily. So I was like, okay,
Yeah,
Emily.
Kathy
So
knows
just
me as
wanted
Emily. People know me as both. Either one is totally fine.
okay. So I see you work at Temple.
I have in the past. I
Okay.
recently I recently, I guess you could call it a sabbatical. I'm a PhD candidate there for music studies, but I was
Awesome.
5 years in and had sent in drafts and drafts of the dissertation, and it was getting rejected. And there are some political reasons for that. And so it got to a point where I decided that I needed to at least temporarily step away for my health because there's other chronic conditions I'm dealing with. And so I'm not
No, you got
officially,
to
I'm
take
still
care of you.
associated. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you got to take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that was a big like blow to my ego and identity, but it was really the right thing. So for now, I'm stepped away and I'm not sure if I'll finish or not, but that's a question for next year. I think in the meantime, I'm just
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, so yeah, we do have very similar
I
paths
think so.
because, well, my background is obviously dance, and I have been in higher ed for a while. And I did my MFA in dance at Texas Women's University. And trust me, I had a lot of doctoral candidates always in my office. Like, it's a lot. It's a huge undertaking. And I fully support you taking care of yourself. And I know the toxicity, and I don't know if it is just Temple because I have another friend who got her MFA at Temple and dance, but she's like, Temple is like crazy. And
Temple's
she
pretty
told me,
crazy.
yeah, like so many bureaucratic. She was also a Black woman, so she felt very like racist
There is, yep.
energy. And But anyway, so I totally understand. Like you have to do what's best for you. I don't know if I would go back to those 3 years of
Yeah.
my life. I'm glad I got through them, but yeah, so it is a very interesting world to be in, especially in academia, in the arts, because that's usually like the work I do outside of academia is a lot of advocacy work and
Yeah.
program building. And sometimes, as you know, as an artist too, it's like it's never really fully supported. And you're always having to hustle to try and get someone just to try and understand what the hell you're doing
Yep.
or get funding, just like a little bit of funding to do some grand scale event that you don't always get paid enough for, and just really trying to measure up in society as like what does an artist do. And then also me as a pedagogue, I think about, how am I going to teach my students and what do I want them to get out of this? And it's really like, what other skills do you have that you're learning in these arts classes, music, dance, whatever, that are going to propel you in life outside of these walls of academia that will help you pay your bills? Like, it's not just going to be creating a dance and putting it on stage or
Mhm.
composing a music composition. Like, you have to do other things. And that's where the creativity, I think, really, for me, I had to learn for myself outside of school. That's kind of
And
this
most
world
people
I've been in.
do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That kind of brings me to a question I had for you because my
Yeah.
experience is that there is this massive disconnect between what we're doing in the university in the field of music and music studies versus the practical reality of living a life as a musician, for example. There
Mm-hmm.
is just a big break, even a bodily disconnect. And I saw you talk about somatic approaches as well. And I'm very curious to talk about that. So I'm kind of skipping ahead, but I really wonder, like, what's your overall sense of the state of dance? Is there that disconnect? Is that the same, or is it more like alive with dance?
Mm, that's a great question. I think for me, I completely agree with your standpoint because there is this disconnect, I think, with, for example, if we're looking at academe, this curriculum model. And this is like a huge institutional model that has to be dismantled to really understand, okay, what is not only happening in the self and the personal level, that's where that somatic awareness comes in, what is also happening in our world. Like professors or even students, like they can't afford their tuition. Our professors can't afford to pay their bills. And these are like life, like altering issues and challenges. And so when you bring that into the college forefront, students aren't worried about like, okay, the dance history lecture. They're worried about how they're going to be able to equip themselves and pay their bills outside of school. So in academia, I think for me, my biggest goal going into this new position is like, one, really look at the curriculum. Is it adhering to what is happening in reality outside in our world? And can we shift and change some of that curriculum to really say, like, okay, here's this project on, yes, creating movement or music or whatever it is. Then also, let's do this other project that's really going to help you articulate how to talk about what it is you're doing, how to use these skills to equip you to find a job maybe outside of your field that will help you in society and being a citizen. So I definitely think there's a disconnect between those two worlds of reality of outside of academia and how being an artist can affect that. And then also inside of academia, like keeping up with the time, changing the curriculum, being relevant to today, but also still going back and saying, well, history repeats itself in some ways too. In the body, I see there's such a disconnect with everyone because everyone is like this on their phones, on their tablets, on their, on their computers. I see it just walking. Like I take nature walks pretty often. When I would be at the beach, I'd walk on the beach,
Mhm.
or here where I live, I walk on the river walk. And It's like I make eye contact with people and it's like dodged because everyone is so closed off. And I
Mhm.
think that comes into not only the classroom, the dance classroom, but just in general with our conversations with people in life. Like people don't want to have these vulnerable moments of eye contact because they're maybe afraid to let you in, see inside, or there's tension in their body because they're not able to fully connect. And what does that mean to connect? Because we all want that. We all want a connection with someone. So I think disconnect and the somatic practices that I really use is like trying to really understand where you at right now. Where is your body? Because if you're in this fight or flight response, thinking about 100 things, then it's like you're not going to be able to. So understanding that for yourself and self-awareness, I think is huge in a lot of my practice of being within yourself and then in relationship with others.
Yeah, so community plays a big part in that, absolutely. And I think with music, a big part of the disconnect has to do with the separation from the body of the music itself, and like the musamification of like, let's put it up on the stage separate from, like, somehow the audience is a separate thing instead of it's all one thing happening to everybody. And so, yeah, I wonder, and I'm not as much of an expert on somatic movement, but it's something that I'm very interested in starting to incorporate into my own kind of what I want to talk about is practical ways for people to re-empower themselves with their musicality and realize it's, to me it's like this severed limb that people have that they don't realize was gone, but it belongs to them, and it's always like a very human thing. Like any human can make music, that's something common among all of us, right? And it's bodily, it's because of our heartbeats or a rhythm or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, the somatic stuff probably has a lot to do with making like present awareness through just reconnecting to your body. Is that right? And you mentioned like breath work and flow, and I wonder how those concepts also play into it. And yeah,
Yeah.
just connecting.
I think it's interesting that you say that, like everyone has this musicality within them. And for me too, it's like I say that about dance. So if you can move your body, or even if you don't have an able body in formats, like you still have rhythm inside of you. So I fully support that and saying that anyone can create music or anyone can move, be a dancer or a mover, right? And so a lot of I would say my yoga background and utilizing breath work and meditation, and just trying to understand, and it all comes back to that personal self-awareness. So thinking about breath work and understanding how the breath can actually help you and how the breath can be a rhythm within inside of you, and how it can ground you and how it can give you more energy. So I think all of those are awareness tools for people to really develop and understand themselves better.
Yeah. And
Um,
you take from yoga, so you've practiced yoga, and is that like a spiritual relationship you have? Or maybe, I guess I'm curious just overall, like maybe what's your relationship to spirituality and how that kind of influences your approach? Or maybe yoga is just, but it feels to me like it's something deeper, and yoga
yeah.
just tends to be.
Yeah, your feeling is spot on. I would say, I initially went into yoga as what most people do is for the quote asana practice, which is only one limb of the 8 limbs of yoga, which is the philosophy. And a lot of people go into it for just the workout or the practice, the physical practice.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. But then, really, for me, it became more of trying to deepen my relationship with myself, again, in tune with spirituality and being able to solidify my own connection with myself and the universe and the people within it and my relationships. So it is deeper for me because I use yoga as a time for tapping in closer for myself and making that awareness that it's not just about moving my body, but how in these movements am I connecting to my breath work, connecting to the people in the room around me, or even just myself and the energy in the room. And in these moments, those are really quiet moments to like listen and soften and see really where my heart and my mind are at. And also connecting, and I would say that's a sacred prayer time for me because it's a connection with my body, my mind, my heart, and my breath, and all are in sync, and creating that energy to expand out that vibration
Yeah.
helps me, helps the world, kind of.
Yeah, and it is like internal and external. And then it kind of ties back to these ideas of community and community building too.
Yeah. Which is,
I'm hearing
I
that.
would say, is, I've been doing a lot of internal reflecting on my life and just like, what do I want to take away in this workshop I'm leading in January, which
Yeah,
would
I'd
love
love
for
to hear
you
about
to,
that.
yeah, I'd love for you to participate or share or just, tell you more about it.
That would be wonderful.
It's, yeah, it's one of those things like, I think we've maybe all in our lives been in situations where we've not felt a part of something or felt othered
Hmm.
or felt isolated. And I think in whatever those realms are for everyone, I think for me, it's really been community is a part of who I am
Hmm.
and how I identify in creating communities.
Hmm.
And a lot of people that know me know that I flow in and out of communities. And it's something when I say I flow in and out of them, it's something where I want to create them and I want to uplift them. And I want to be able to really understand how to connect with other people and help them connect with themselves more.
Yeah.
So I think for me, community is a huge part of what it is I'm trying to do. And especially with this workshop, I'm reaching out to different people from all over the states, all over the world, really, because I think it's important to really hone in on what I'm doing in this workshop is really understanding, like coming back to the whole, I think, purpose of this conversation is like, who are you? How do you present yourself to the world? How do you really articulate a personal mission statement to hold you accountable to then go and create goals for yourself to create the life that you want? And essentially, what the workshop is really just identifying more of who you are, what you want to do with yourself, and holding yourself accountable as you go and work towards things for your future.
Very interesting. I'm thinking about accountability and what that kind of looks like, I guess. I'm also interested in
Yeah.
your description of flowing in and out of communities because that's really I relate a lot of things to water. A lot of what I studied in my dissertation and my master's thesis were about music in the early 20th century that is about or imitates water, and then specifically French music. And I was talking by extension about like Orientalism and a bunch of different like feminist frameworks and things around it and what that might mean for them metaphorically. But in the kind of literal way, it's like the music is all moving like water and it flows around with the same kind of energy patterns. And that was so fascinating to me. And I think musical energy flows in a very watery way, and a lot of different kinds of energy flow, or flow is a really good word, I guess, for the way that energies work. And I think it applies on a lot of macro and micro levels. And it makes a lot of sense that it's also kind of how you experience communities and community building because they're always in flux. That's something I've also learned about community is that it's not like it's not an object. It's in flux. And so there can be a moment where the dynamic is working very well and everything is healthy and and there has to be, it's like entropic, like things shift so quickly and you have to be shifting with them and almost like swimming in the water of it. So I just really appreciate that way of framing it because I think that's exactly right. And I mean, community building is very difficult when you're dealing with a lot of different kind of people. But I wonder, like, what kind of strategies do you find are really effective in what you've done, or what have you seen really work in terms of sustainable, healthy communities?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think to piggyback to the flow part really quickly. I'm similar to you. The water is very calming for me. And growing up at the beach, I always tell my students when they have like new students who haven't really had me before, my movement, I would say quality is very flowy and very seamless and wave-like,
Mhm.
transitionally spiraling. Those connections, it's like hard not to move
Yeah.
when I'm talking about it.
Mhm.
But I would say for me, it's very important to find the connections within the movement and creating seamless spirals. And so if I transport that same methodology to how I like help build communities, it's really about finding the different connection points and the strategies to help build the communities. So finding key people in the community that are doing the work, that are building and doing, for example, in our field, like arts things, like who is doing the arts things in these communities? And who are really already, I would say, like a focal point. And then finding those connections and riding that wave with them, because then that will lead you to other connections and where you can see, like, oh, here's an opportunity area. This is an area where I feel like we can build more. So, for example, a production series that I've been working on with one of my collaborators is really just thinking about looking at the different artists in a community and producing and curating a show, but not always the artists who are in the front lines all the time, like giving other opportunities to artists who might not get to, be produced all the time or don't get the big grants to create their own shows. So for me, in the strategies, it's really like in some ways like finding your connection points who are the people are doing the work in the community and learning from them, and also zooming out and seeing like where is a need, and then going back in and saying, okay, using those connection points to then create a seamless outcome to come full circle and build.
Yeah, I love that. And I love talking about, I'm thinking about connections, and I wonder if you, how do I say that? Like, first of all, I wonder if you have any like background in I know there's a big thing of like diversity, equity, inclusion kind of going on in universities in general, but I personally I went to 4 universities and I never because I got 2 master's degrees and I never even really had a chance to study a lot about things like intersectionality and decolonization and anti-racism until I got to Temple. And I wonder if that's I don't know, I wonder if that's like a big conversation, I guess in dance as well. I'm sure that it must because it has everything, in my opinion, it has a lot, everything to do with art, like the who the artist is and the whole framework of that, and identity ties in my opinion. But I wonder if that's the same kind of conversation going on. And then with connections, it makes me think of categories and then kind of the borderlines or spaces in between the categories and to me that's like a very powerful, it's like a site of liminality and a site of real like a lot of power when you can kind of move in between things that are binarily opposed like artificially. That's a little bit of
Yeah.
a tangential thought, but I guess what I'm asking is like is that a big conversation, and does your approach, which is more like about these kind of connected motions, is that a response to something that's happened before in dance? And does that maybe go alongside that kind of change in ideology? I don't know if that makes
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just got real deep.
sense.
And I love it.
Aquarian Music Witch, the podcast, is made possible by listeners like you. To support this project, you can contribute directly through our Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/Aquarian Music Witch, or consider subscribing to our Supercast page. With the AMW Supercast Content Access Pass, you'll gain access to a vault of exclusive content and other cosmic perks starting at just $5 a month. Now, back to the show.
So a little more of my background, especially in grad school, because grad school opens your eyes to
Yep.
many things, as you know. Uh, I would say so. I went to a primarily all like Latina institution in Dallas area, Texas. I was a minority. in my cohort, which I loved. And it was so eye-opening for me that it really started the path of really understanding like activism. I went to all women's university basically. So there's a lot of feminism, women's leadership involved in my coursework and materials. And that really started me wondering more about this ideology of DEI. This was like before that really started to become a term in 2020, you know, the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. But I was really studying that in terms of being an artist and the artwork that I create as a choreographer, which really comes down to personal narratives and experiences, then also looking at what's happening in the community and using my artwork as a way, as if it's protest or if it's like meaning and saying a message about what is happening. So fast forward to these years now and being in academia, being a professor, I really try to approach my classes from that background of social justice, of DEI inclusion, and really starting to say like, you know, especially looking at history and where we've come in dance and academia, art is history itself. Where are we seeing progress and where are we seeing digression? And where can, you know, we really work towards making that change? And I know in academia there is, and I was just talking to my chair about this, there is wanting to have this de-emphasis of a Eurocentric vision, which I'm very sure is the same in music.
Mm-hmm.
And as we shift the curriculum, going back to the curriculum, really looking at the ideologies of, it's not just specifically in dance, modern and ballet dance forms that are shaping and shifting and doing all this like progressive. It's really giving an opportunity for these other dance forms to come in. And I really see, you know, where my alma mater, Texas Women's University, did that. Bringing in same levels of different dance forms that are not just ballet and modern Eurocentric focus, bringing in different guest artists that are really focused on more Latino, Latina, Hispanic dance forms. I thought they did a great job with that. And I think with this new position, it's really important to me to bring different diverse experiences to the forefront. And with one of those, one of my biggest goals is really creating experiences for students to get outside of this environment and study abroad and go to a different country and see how other countries move. These different cultural experiential learning opportunities is, I think, one of my, I would say, like, big passion is my passion to really get students to see like there are other ways of living, there's other ways of moving, and that's a diverse experience as well.
Yeah. And you worked at Santana Institute in Sorrento, Italy, right? So that must have been a big cultural difference. And I wonder if were there any specific things about the dance in your experience of that are notable, or things that you learned
Yeah.
because of that displacement?
Yeah. Well, you know, Italy is it's my happy place. It's my second home. I've been going there. It'll be 10 years this year. 2023 was 10 years have since I first went in 2013 to dance. I would say it's very interesting in Italy because majority of the revenue from the country comes from American tourism. About 2/3 of the revenue that produces is coming from tourism. And it's really interesting how the university, Santana, or the institute rather, is wanting to make sure it's paralleling with what's happening in the university systems in America, because majority of the students that come to study there are American students. So a lot of what my job was really just trying to not only partner with institutions who have these DEI inclusion experiential learning initiatives already to bring their students over because they see that as a value in a core curriculum, but it was also really eye-opening for me to indulge in the culture and what the students are learning, because that is so different in their day-to-day lives of being home in the United States. So reflecting on, just for me, the culture of who am I in this new environment, talking about these hard times. It's not just I always say it's not just a highlight reel on Instagram where you see all the good things and the best places to eat and these beautiful views. It's really about deepening, coming full circle back to our conversation earlier about yourself and your awareness, and how are you in these different environments and being so far away from home. How do you cope with these skills of not wanting, not maybe understanding the culture, understanding, who you are in this space and growing from that. So that was really important for me, not only just bringing students over and having them, experience this wonderful place and learn, but really learn more about themselves and how do they feel equipped to go and do other things in the world.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there localized dance forms in Sorrento or in Italy that are things you would see kind of, I don't know, just like in public or in public spaces maybe, or something different than what you would just experience in a day-to-day America?
That's a great question. I would say so primarily um, what Italy has is, I would say, because I'm usually there in the summers. They have what they have are, like, I would say, what we would call as like mini festivals, or like different different things happening in front of the piazza. So you would say like a show or performance, but it would be primarily more outdoor. And usually during those performances, you would see a, rendition of, music, dance, and primarily dance would be very balletic forms, but also some traditional formatting in dance as well. I know one of the dance forms in Italy that was known was the tarantella,
Mm-hmm.
but it's primarily now what you see is more that still Eurocentric focus of ballet, and then very narrative performance of what dance is.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the companies that I was working with would bring, students all over to study, but would do these very abstract uh, and very, I would say, completely different dance forms than what most Italians would normally see. So it's kind of nice to see a contrast that there is space to room and grow with these different abstract dance forms, such as improvisation, modern, whatever, to seeing like ballet all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. I know about the tarantella too, because that became like a piano form basically. But again, it gets separated from the actual dance. It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't work as a dance anymore once it's like the tarantella form, in classical music. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
And so does ballet to you stand for like the Europeanized kind of, or like maybe we could say like a white European kind of ideal of dance? Is that kind of the standard that, because I know there's also a lot of unhealthy kind of weight expectations in ballet and things like that that I could definitely see tying into white supremacist ideals, which are definitely a big problem in music theory. So I guess is ballet like the symbol of all of that, or is it more than just ballet as a dance?
Yeah, it's a great, I would say, view and like similarity. There have been stigmas in the past, and it's been obvious too, especially with these older companies, mainstream companies in ballet. There was always a stigma to look a certain way.
Mhm.
Specific choreographers would want the dancer to be a certain weight or to look a certain way. I'm sure there's still some of that going on today, which is, sometimes it's unfortunate because there are so many different body types. Again, DEI, ways of inclusion. There's so many different ways of being and moving and looking, especially on stage. But yes, there has been that. And I would say there's probably that similar parallel, as you said, to music. But I think for me, that was something I really had to learn as a young dancer because I'm not tall and thin and 100 pounds. I have a very opposite body type of that. And, but I've still danced professionally and I've still worked and with different choreographers and I've produced my own work and I'm doing it. So I think that is a way to show you like how far maybe we've come in terms of you don't always have to look a certain way or be a certain way. You can be who you are and still be successful in whatever that means for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's great to hear. Did you feel like when you were coming up that you faced discrimination for those things? Or did you feel like it was, are there people that kind of paved that path that you could walk, or were you one of the pavers of the path, you know?
Well, I would say, and probably the people who know me my life, they know that I'm a paver. And I like the way you say, like, I'm a paver. I am a paver. And I don't think I had anyone really model that for me. I had to learn that on my own
Mm.
and really push through and pave the way for, I would say, not only myself, but I hope my other students and dancers that I've worked with
Yeah.
to let them know, like, this is okay to be this way. It's okay to look a different way. Um, it's okay to move differently. I know I've had dancers who have been self-taught and who don't have like actual professional or like foundational training.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You can still be a wonderful performer and not have that. So, yeah, I did definitely growing up. I experienced bullying and being definitely the other, and that's not always a good feeling, and that's why it's really important to me to make community, to make sure people don't feel that way within, within belonging. Everyone wants to feel like they belong in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
Did you have any people that you felt like were mentors to you? Because you say you didn't really have a lot of representation, and I'm sure that you have then served as I think representation is really important. And once you can see someone do it, you can do it. You know, you can imagine that you can do it, and then it's suddenly possible. And it sounds like you're that person for others. But did you have also anybody that you looked up to, or even like I don't know, philosophers, or just maybe choreographers who are big names that you styled yourself after? Or did you, I guess, where did the inspiration come from for you to kind of take that route?
Mhm. Really good question. I would say I've had a few different mentors, and it's interesting because I see a lot of, for the different parts of my life, I see a lot of my parts and all, or a lot of myself. Hang on, how do I say this? I see parts of myself in each of them. And during those parts of my life, they were like North Stars where I would gravitate and try to work towards what they said. And I would say, I guess this idea of dance and being my identity as an artist, a creative, really started to formulate and take place when I was in high school. And it's interesting because a lot of my wound of like, I would say my life and how it's really adapted who I am as a person started during those formulation years when I was a teenager and just being like exiled out of a community, being bullied. And then I found dance, or dance found me. I think it's like reciprocal. We both chose each other. And I had my teacher, her name is Ivy Hale. And she said, she always says now, because we still are in contact, she's like, it just kind of clicked for you. And it's nice to see that in students where it clicks. And she's like, you can go to school for this. You can, major in dance in college. And I was like, okay. So I did that. And then along the way, like I met other professors that are really dear to me and kind of moved towards them. And then I graduated and I went to Italy and started working with a choreographer who's very to me. His name's George Stabe. And seeing him actually like creating work and like building this program to bring students abroad has kind of been a very foundational point of what I want to do. And seeing him do it was like, I can do this too, but in my own way. And then going to grad school and building and like working towards like, you know, community building, arts administration, like understanding what it means to be a pedagogue and to really think about these community factors really started to take shape. And my mentor there, Mary Williford Shade, really kind of gave me the fire I needed to push forward and do those things. But also, she was a person who pushed me really hard. And I think that is something that I needed to help push myself. So I think these people have always come in and out of my life. And I also really love Kelly Clarkson
Okay.
as a musician. And
Okay.
I think she, to me, when I look at a role model and someone who's just authentic and just being who she is, because I know
Mhm.
she's faced bullying, I know she's had hard times in her life and struggles, but she always shows up and in such a positive outlook of a way that it's like, I want to do that too. So I think, yeah, I've definitely had my mentors. I've had people I've learned from and appreciate, but then I've also kind of done it all my own way
Yeah.
too.
No, it
Take
sounds
from
like
others,
trailblazer.
take from others, and then create my own way.
That's all art though, too, right? It's all
Yeah.
taking something and recontextualizing it, and
Yep.
a lot that goes
Exactly.
into that. I wonder, were you teaching over the pandemic? How did that go?
Hmm.
How did you do that? Because we moved online and it did not work very well. But how was
Yeah, I was well, so I didn't necessarily teach too much online, but I did teach with the masks. And that was definitely very hard.
Mhm.
I mean, especially like just moving your body and going back to the birth thing to feel like you can't breathe was really distraught for me. And I know it was for my students. And it just was also another barrier, another disconnect that felt like we weren't able to really just be and move in the way that we wanted. It was very restricting. So I think that was, you know, a very difficult time and just not touching because so much about dance is really about this, you know, this connection you have not only with yourself but with others. And to take away that just felt so limiting and yeah, and it just felt like there was no sense of building trust, no sense, you know, working with others or community building or problem solving together in the dance classroom or in the studio.
Okay.
So it was difficult. However, when we were able to move past that, I think there was so much more of an appreciation and overall understanding that no, we still need this. We still need these connections and ways of moving and being with one another.
Yeah. Very interesting. Do you think that students coming in after that struggled with anything as a result of that in terms of being able to, like, we can appreciate the gravity of that human connection, but did people struggle with it after it was a time coming back? And I guess I'll just mention as a parallel in music, one major thing we struggled with when the students started to come in after those first few pandemic years was that they had all missed out on things like playing in a band or an orchestra in high school. So coming into the theory classes, they couldn't hear vertical harmonies, which was such a weird surprise effect of that, but they just had no training in their ear to like be working with other people and listening across in that way. And so
Mhm.
the courses all had to take a step back and start from a more remedial place for that entire year over multiple universities. It was like a whole worldwide, America-wide thing, as far as I know. Was there anything like that that was a hard thing for people to come back to touching or like a fear around that? I'm sure.
Yeah, most definitely. They're still dealing with it, honestly, Emily. Like I see students who are like, it's still a trauma response.
Mhm.
They're not able to articulate what's really happening inside their bodies. And I think coming back studio, there was this like fear factor. Oh, if I touch you, is it okay if I touch you? Like this overall ideology of consent was huge. Not that it wasn't before, but it's like, do you feel comfortable with that? And so like relearning what those barriers were and deconstructing those, I think is still in progress, still in flux. But definitely it is something that students, I think, they don't know how don't have the means to articulate how they're feeling sometimes. And so that would come off as a disconnect in their bodies
Mhm.
and with anyone in general. So I think my job as a, as a professor now is really to kind of demystify that and to really say like this is how we move, this is how you can move, and giving them the agency that they need to say, I can do this, I
Mhm.
feel equipped to do this, I want to try and take a risk and do this.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of what COVID did was eliminate those risks taking and that excitement of what movement can actually do, and especially with another person.
Mhm. Took away excitement. That is so interesting.
Yeah, and that's something I want to talk a lot about in the workshop that I'm doing too, is just like, what gravitate towards things that excite you and that bring you joy. And what does that feel like in the body? If you move more towards those things, it'll lead you on a path of something maybe you haven't really thought about before.
Hmm. Do you know Sarah Ahmed, the scholar who writes about affect theory, which might tie into somatic stuff? I'm not sure if that's something you'd study, but
I think I've heard of that. Sarah
Sarah
Ahmed.
Ahmed. Yeah. I cannot remember the actual source, but I know it was that author. And at some point she talks about objects of happiness and how there's like a stickiness to them, and how
Mhm.
we, and it kind of to me goes into my thoughts about like manifestation and kind of magnetizing things toward ourselves. But it was like she makes this point about, an affect theory is all about like the, like how things feel and bodily forms of knowledge basically. And she talks about like happiness being, having like a stickiness to where it kind of draws you in, or you draw in things that make you happy, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I need to reread that. That was a couple years ago, but
Yeah, send that to me. That sounds super interesting and up my alley. For
yeah, I
real.
will send. I'll look it up and I'll send it to you because I think it's called Happy Objects. Let me see if I can quickly. I might
Okay.
find it, but
Yeah. No, I think manifestation is huge, and I talk a lot about that. And um, not only this workshop, but just in general, I think there's so much that we have power over and want to create in our lives, or how we want to create our lives. We're the authors of our lives. I mean, I think there are plans and things are divinely placed in timing, but yeah, manifesting is huge for
yeah,
what
and
you want to do and accomplish.
yes, and it has so much to do with all that, with all that, the way that energy works, which is all about flow. And
Mhm.
any way you could talk about energy, I think all ties into the same thing. But the way that you feel all of that moving around as you're dancing is absolutely some kind of manifestation of that, and of that same kind of energy that is manifesting energy. And I know there's like energy centers. I don't know how much, but like
Mhm.
chakral energy centers. And I had an experience of really unlocking some of those through dance myself. And I am nothing more than a completely amateur dancer, but I had a lot of like disconnect between my head and my body for my whole life, I think, and was so intellectualizing everything, but
Mhm.
repressed in my body. And I started to kind
Yes.
of just do these like motions and put my feet on the ground and just kind of start moving. And just those physical motions and getting into a practice of doing that, like privately within my house, was
Mhm.
really what unlocked those things for me. So I think it's so much about energy and flow, and then all of that ties back into like getting that energy to move in a way that draws things in toward you, what you need or
Yeah.
what you're looking for.
I love that you did that for yourself, because in some ways, like, you're healing yourself. And I know I see it so many times with people that I work with, clients
Mm.
or students. It's like they start talking about something and then their shoulders go like this, or they're like getting tense and their whole body is like they're all here. but they're not in their bodies, or they're not allowing that energy to move. And that is so important. So I'm really glad that you're able to do that for yourself and to continue doing that. And just to know how it feels. Like I know, because I'm very heady and very analytical, and I like to analyze and like the pros and cons of things and making decisions. But I know when I get to that place of, oh, I'm too much in my head, that I have to move my body. That's
Yeah.
where the yoga comes in, or the walk. I have to get the energy out, or just find some movement to improvise. So it's important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I really would love to participate in this workshop, and I know you sent me, or I was sent some information about it, but I would love to do that. And I think I unfortunately have to hop off. I wish I could talk to you for another many hours, because I'm sure we could talk and talk,
Yeah.
but maybe again soon. I would love to.
Yeah, please do. I mean, that's my number. That's my cell number. So would love for you to sign up for the workshop. It's kind of like a consecutive, like weekly thing. I know people can't always make it every week, but it's okay. I'll record and
Mhm.
send notes.
Okay.
But this podcast, so this is your person, really quickly, because I know you have to hop off. But so what are your goals with your podcast and with this episode?
Oh no, it's a good question. I think it's shaping up to be um well, I have a lot of ideas that circle around concepts of spirituality, philosophy, politics, and music. And I don't think the university was quite the right place to try to express those, hence my dissertation not quite working
Mhm.
out. Um, but and then I got on TikTok and I started to talk on there about it, and I got a pretty hefty following. But one of the problems with TikTok is that there's everything is shot at you out of context because it's just like a little chunk of a video or something. So it worked in some ways. It worked for me to kind of workshop and work out my ideas among other people for a while. And now I feel like I'm in a next phase where I have kind of a more comprehensively like figured out thing, but it has a lot of ideas. Like I have all these, like I have all these ideas about Foucault and like gender and intersectionality, and then Foucault and Jung and Freud all talk about symbolism and metaphor, and then all of that leads to my ideas about like what is reality, what is God, what is truth, and then what's going on with politics, and then what is energy, and then all the music stuff. So it's sort of like me laying that out, and then also I think just having interesting conversations with different people who are who have different and very interesting perspectives, because I think it's very rhizomal. Like the whole way I've always learned has been like make a bunch of nodes of thought and then connect them all into a big web, rather than do something linear. And so
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's just like all these different nodes of like talking around some of these ideas. Um, and like this has been very interesting because of this. Like you are in a really close world to me. So yeah, that
Yeah, and just the way you're talking about like mind mapping,
yeah.
and just like how you like, it's so crazy because for me it's like, yeah, my I start with the mind map of all these
Mhm.
different nodes. I like how you said that. And then like, but I also am a very linear person. Like I have to like have things a certain way. I have to. But no, and then it's interesting because I just got in my, because I journal obviously and I meditate, but it's like my question today was like, what are your beliefs?
Mhm.
And so I'm going to write that back down because I feel like I'm in a transitional period of my life. Like, what am I believing about myself, about my community, about what I want to create? So, no, I think we are very similar in that. And any like literature, anything that you're like, oh, maybe I should send
Yeah,
that to Ashley. Please
I
send
will
my
do
way. I
that.
love reading that stuff
Okay.
because we are, I think you're also a paver. And what something really quickly I want to just tell you is like, I think I've always wanted to do things in my own way, but I had to like really understand how other systems worked first
Mhm.
before I could really start to create what that
Yeah.
means for me. And I think you're in that place right now too. And I'm
Yes.
still in that working place of like, okay, this doesn't really work out over here, but okay, I want to see how I can create it here.
Absolutely. I
I think
appreciate
that's what
that.
you're trying to tie that all into your podcast and what you're doing, and maybe it's, yeah, taking a break from the dissertation. This is that shifted you into this place now for a reason.
Absolutely. Everything is was always leading me up to
Yeah.
wherever I am and wherever I'm going next. And that's all. I'm trusting
Mhm.
the process, but it's also been a pretty very tower kind of few years here with a lot of upheaval and change and a lot of silver linings to some pretty crazy situations, of course. And but yeah, I will definitely send you a couple of articles that this made me think of that I think you might be interested in. And I really look forward to that workshop. When does it start?
Yeah. On the 7th of January. And if you
Yeah.
go to my web and you did your homework, I did go to my website. I'm like, did I send you my bio? I don't know. I didn't remember. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, if you go to
Send
my
your bio.
website, okay, great. It's kind of long. Like I
No,
need
it's
to
good.
edit some of that. But I will it's on there. It's on under wellness and you can sign up for that. But yeah. And I guess just let me know when you have a place to like, what's your format podcast?
Oh yeah, so I will be doing like a supercast site. The other thing is I'm trying to make an offering for so I'll have like a subscript, but yours will be just like a public one, but I'll have like a subscription kind of thing and then for people to also do like composition lessons with me if they want. So all of that's going to be on like a supercast website, but also I'm going to distribute it with an RSS feed, so it's going to be on like anywhere you would see a podcast like Spotify. Also, I'm going to put it on
Cool.
excuse me, on YouTube. So, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of building up episodes where I have another podcast from another time in my life, which was earlier this year, which I can shoot you the link to if you're interested. But
Yeah.
it was more about like social media and parasocial relationships between influencers and their followings and like cult like followings of influencers when they deal with that dynamic in an unhealthy way. So
Cool.
it was like that kind of pop culture stuff. But this one I'm going to start releasing on January 1st as just like a
Nice.
fresh new year kind of thing and start hopefully doing weekly releases. But right now I'm just kind of like shoring up episodes for that. So it'll be a little bit ahead of the game once I start that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
But I'll
love
send you the
that.
link.
Well, yeah, definitely share that with me. And then if you register for the workshop, then you'll meet different people. So maybe there will be another, like I know a few people like who signed up who are kind of in the same world. So maybe that could be a connection point for you in
Very
your
cool.
podcast.
I love that. Well, I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to all of those connections. Human to human
yeah,
connection. That's where it's at. I really love it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so
Well,
much for
yeah,
talking to me today. You're
yeah.
lovely and brilliant, and I'm so happy that we got to talk. It's been
So
wonderful.
are you, Emily. You're lovely and brilliant. We'll do this again. And yeah, anytime, yeah, send me something anytime. And I wish you the best of luck with this podcast. It sounds amazing. And I appreciate you thinking of me and Kathy.
Yeah, thank you, and God bless Kathy, and I
Yeah.
hope we'll talk soon, you and I.
Yeah.